She's a doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dovek, and she's a dietitian.
Hey, I'm Hannah Schuyler, and together we are
the Doctor Dietitian Collab.
Hi, everyone, and on this week's episode, we are talking all things sleep. Sleep, in my opinion, is a pillar that is just as important as both diet and exercise in this whole equation towards better health.
I think it's a super important pillar, and it's super underrepresented. We don't talk about sleep enough.
We really don't. There's so much information out there about diets and fads and all of these sorts of things and movement. Anywhere you turn on Instagram, you're going to be, for example, just bombarded with this stuff. But you're right, sleep is underrepresented. But today we're going to devote the next however many minutes to nothing else but this topic. Hopefully by the end of it, you won't be sleeping yourself. Hopefully you will still be engaged.
I always think about the Sleep Book by Dr. Seuss. Did you ever read that or have your kids read that?
Yes. You guys you sent it to me after one of my conversations. But yes.
Yeah, because I always think about that, and even just saying the word sleep over and over makes you sleepy. So sorry if we do that to you guys today. I hope not.
Big yawns, get that oxygen in there. Let's get flowing and let's get chatting here. So there's a lot of different components of sleep, and there's this bidirectional relationship as to when you should eat, what you should eat, how close to bedtime you should eat, and how it affects your sleep. There's also a relationship between sleep and what exactly you eat and why you want to eat it. And there's a lot of changes we're going to talk about at both a brain level, a hormonal level, and just a basic desire level that have to do with sleep. So there's a lot of places to jump in. But I'm going to start off with a personal experience here. I just got back from Australia. Down under me.
How was it?
It was intensely awesome, I will say.
Yeah.
It was intense. I gave 11 presentations over 4 days.
Wow.
I was barely there.
And you only texted me in the middle of the night once. I did? I was really proud of you.
Well, you responded I was like, it has to be in the middle of the night there. I was like, did she go to the bathroom?
4 a.m. No, somebody else randomly messaged me. My friend from Germany sent me 11 messages, literally at the same time as you. So I got all of a sudden my phone was just bzz, bzz, bzz. So I think it was it was super coincidental. He never does that. So I woke up and saw yours.
I was like, well, I'll take this as a license to keep going. She just wrote me back. And then I wrote you something you didn't write back. I'm like, she went back to sleep. She wrote me back for 1 second. So yes, I try to refrain from bothering my Eastern Standard Time U.S. friends when I was on the other side of the world. But boy, you really have to plan. We have our travel episode about planning mentally for just the physical nature of it, but I had to plan my sleep routine too. And it really did, it throws you off big time. Yeah. Just to get there, I left on Sunday, February 12th, and I got there on Tuesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th.
That's wild.
So, it was wild. I flew 5 hours to LA. I had a 10-hour layover in LA. That was the hardest part. And then I had a 18-hour flight from LA to Melbourne.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. And then you're intense. But you have no idea what time it is, what day of the week it is. Now it's summertime over there.
It's summertime. Yeah.
Now, granted, we're in Florida. It's basically around summer, but
I know. And at points they're like, it's a hot one today. And my accent is awful. Just ignore me. That was it's such a hot one down here. And you're like, well, I'll tell you.
It's very raspy Australian.
And I'm like, it's actually hotter in Florida. But yes, it was their summer. It was beautiful. But I got the advice to set your clock to the hour that it was. And so I lost a whole day of my life. I lost February 13th. I'll never get that back. It was, nothing happened.
I don't think anything great happened. Yeah.
So I missed it. But then the longest day of my life was the day I returned on I think it was the Saturday. It was so long that my watch was like, how do you walk for more than 24 hours? I got so many standals. It was just tripped out. It was very cool. So anyway, I stood for over 24 hours that day.
Oh my gosh. That is so crazy.
So weird. But anyway, yes, there was so much in there. And I feel like a lot about what we're going to talk about is so very true. And I want to start off and talk about appetite and those hormones that control our appetite. So I'm going to get nerdy right on the start, our favorite thing to do. And I'm going to talk about two hormones that if you've had weight loss surgery or you're thinking about it, or you're just listening to our podcast for just overall, maybe weight loss tips, health tips, dietitian tips, things like that, you should know about these two hunger hormones called leptin and ghrelin. Mm-hmm. Leptin is the one that when it's on the scene, it's a good thing because leptin is your satisfaction hunger hormone. Mm-hmm. So when you eat, and you should feel that sense of fullness, that I'm done, not another bite, your leptin should be in overdrive. So it will help you to stop eating when you don't need any more. Now, after weight loss surgery, our leptin levels will actually go up in addition to you being physically restricted in the amount that your stomach can hold. Obviously, gastric bypass stomach goes from the size of a football down to the size of a thumb. So it's only 5%. So yes, you're restricted to 5%, but also your leptin will go up as well. In addition, with the sleeve, stomach goes down to the size of a garden hose, about 15 to 20%. So with the conjunction of the leptin going up, your stomach being restricted, that's all good. Ghrelin, which there's a lot more talk about ghrelin on the weight loss surgery scene. Mm-hmm. Ghrelin is that hunger hormone. So ghrelin is what tells your brain you're hungry to eat more, eat more, eat more. So after a sleeve, which ghrelin is made in the portion of the stomach that is removed with the sleeve. So after that, your ghrelin levels will decrease. And you will have that sense of, all right, I don't have ghrelin. Ghrelin tells me I'm hungry. I don't have it. Therefore, that signal to the brain is cut. I'm not going to have that kind of almost obsessive thoughts that I'm hungry and I have to satisfy something. So with leptin going up, ghrelin going down, weight loss surgery works. And that's the balance you want to be in after you eat a meal.
And that's what people who don't have dysregulation, I would say, in their body, sometimes with obesity and things like that, you have dysregulation of those hormones. So somebody who doesn't have that, their ghrelin levels are normal, their leptin levels are normal. They're going to have that normal sense of appetite and satiety. But I think what happens is it gets dysregulated.
That's such an awesome point. So I talked about all the great that the weight loss surgery does, but you're right. The balance of obesity, people who struggle with that, we always talk about how it's multifaceted. It's not just, oh, you're lazy, you don't eat the right thing. It's that there's genetic component, which is one of the biggest things. And as such, it has to do with this hormonal balance. Mm-hmm. So those who struggle with obesity have much lower levels of leptin and much higher levels of ghrelin. So that by having surgery, it finally kind of levels the playing field to at least normal or, normal bodied humans, whatever you want to call it. That your levels will start to go in the correct direction. So you're right, that is dysregulated with obesity. So it's like a chicken or an egg phenomenon. Did it happen because of that? It's probably because of the dysregulation of hormones. So we're talking sleep here. So they look at a lot of studies in terms of what does sleep restriction do for both leptin and ghrelin levels. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what would you consider to be a sleep-deprived state? How many hours per night, and how long do you have to keep in that deprived state to be considered sleep-deprived or restricted?
I mean, I a little bit cheated because I did know we were talking about this today. But 6 hours, less than 6 hours is sleep. And it can happen, I don't know if the 6 hours makes a deprivation after one night, but I know even shortening it after one night, you can have issues.
Yeah, it's something crazy that after just 3 to 4 nights of getting, sub 6 hour, 4 to 5 hours even, some of us think, I don't need sleep to survive. And there's such a gamut. We're going to take definitely surveys on our Instagram stories to say how much do you sleep? You can definitely sleep too much, but for the most part, most Americans are not getting enough.
No, I don't know anybody that sleeps too much.
No,
in my life,
personally
anecdotally,
no.
I don't sleep too much. That's for sure.
All right, well, let's go for it. So, what do you call when you're scrolling on the phone all night and you should be sleeping?
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Okay, you taught me that too.
I know. Gosh. I was just telling we were chatting before this. Spoiler alert, guys. We talked before the episodes. But I was saying, I was like reading about sleep, listening to a talk about sleep and that kind of stuff. And even though I was like terrified last night, I stayed in bed. I like was on my phone, just like scrolling away at nothing. And it was like, Hannah, you just did. And so it's totally such a habit too. And I think that's part of why it's hard to start to break these things. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but like,
Totally.
those types of things that happen.
I know. I'm glad that we're doing this just to put it at the front of my mind as well. Like, you must sleep. Sleep helps on so many levels. We're going to talk more than even just about health and diet and exercise. You're going to talk a little bit about some of the other things coming up. Now, as you expected, leptin levels in sleep restricted will go down. The hunger hormone ghrelin will go up. So it's, even if you're working out and you are on point with your diet and you're just doing everything so well, this can just counteract a lot of that hard work that you're doing during the day. You can unravel it in a second at night.
Yeah. And I feel like your inhibition goes down too when you're tired. You're like, normally, okay, if I'm well rested and I feel hungry, maybe I'm going to reach for like my meal prepped meal or my well balanced whatever. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm extra hungry. Like, I'm going to reach for something that might not fit within my plan right now. Like, that just inhibition is there.
Well, yeah. So to tell you specifically, they've done a lot of studies looking at MRIs and how like those parts of your brain that are involved with that control, if you will, that impulse control, they have looked at what exactly happens in those with a full night's sleep versus those who are sleep deprived. And it is so fascinating. So the first thing is, there is the part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which regulates your impulse control. So if somebody's had a stroke there, they might blurt out things that are not appropriate in public. The prefrontal cortex is also not developed in really little kids until I think like age 6 or 7. So they'll cry, like, if someone takes your cookie, hopefully, Hannah, you won't be crying right now, but my kids will scream and cry still, especially when they get tired. You see it. I'm like, oh, Evan's tired. Here he goes. He's like scream crying over nothing, kind of a thing. And he's almost 6 years old. So it regulates your inhibitions. It's the logic part. It controls all of the parts of your brain that allows you to make these healthy, controlled choices. Well, what happens is, in sleep deprived, that will actually light up, and they will show different types of food, and they will show that the simple sugars, the high density carbs, the ice creams, the pizzas, the chips, all of those things, those like simple sugars that give you the energy that you need really quickly, those areas of your brain, both the prefrontal cortex and your amygdala, which is kind of your emotional center of your brain, those will light up in much more brighter ways than if you were not sleep deprived. So it's proven that the brain will respond even differently to things that you shouldn't do. But like, I'm tired, I'm just scrolling, but screw it. I'm never going to go in there and grill myself a lean piece of chicken breast. It's just in salad.
No.
Like, that's never my midnight snack. I've never heard of such a crazy thing.
Never.
So now another thing about kind of unraveling your efforts during the day has to do with using and burning things for energy. So when you're tired, you need energy. Mm-hmm. Energy can come from fat, which is your preferred thing to burn. We all want to get rid of fat, but it can also come away from lean muscle. And since fat has higher density of energy in it, your body is going to preferentially hold on to fat and burn your lean muscle, which you're spending all day with resistance exercises, lifting weights, again, that high protein diet, especially in the post-op bariatric patient, that it will burn through all of those good eating habits, good things that you're doing, and it will make it so that, you're just burning the wrong thing here.
Right. And that's not, when we look at that long term, that's going to then affect that metabolism. And that's, when we talk about exercise being good for weight maintenance, the reason is because we're going to build up those muscles, and that helps. Your muscles are going to burn more energy than your fat stores and all of that. And so, if you're not sleeping enough and now you're losing your lean muscle, and then especially, if you're somebody who's like trying to work out and gain muscle and you're like, why am I not gaining muscle? Maybe I'm losing weight, or maybe I'm not gaining weight, but my muscles won't grow. Like, what's going on? Maybe you're not sleeping.
I know. And I think I have to always remember when I'm going through, and especially when you're looking at someone's food journal and you're really getting on a very granular level with, okay, like you're really organized. You have all of these things here. Again, we talked about this in the beginning, but okay, this is what you're eating. This is your exercise. Tell me about your sleep. That has to be part of the kind of the comprehensive assessment. And I don't think we do it enough.
I don't think so either. Yeah, we're so focused. I'm a dietitian. I focus on diet. Like that is my thing. I touch on exercise, but no, I mostly focus on diet. And that's totally correct in thinking like, what more do we need to be exploring? And if this sounds like you, maybe this is where you need to be like, I feel like I'm doing everything correctly. What is this other place I can evaluate?
Absolutely. I think that this is something that we all need to take an inventory over and make sure that we prioritize the best bedtime for us. And also knowing ourselves, are you a night owl or are you like an early morning hawk? What would you say? When do you do better?
Oh, I'm a night owl. I peak in the afternoon, I would say. Like once I'm up, I'm usually okay. But getting out of bed for me, lifelong struggle. Always has been. So but I can stay up. But I'm not like up until like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, like some people will do. I'm like midnight, 11 to midnight.
Okay. And then what time do you wake up?
It depends on the day. And this is another place where I'm not regular. I don't have like a regular sleep and wake cycle, which is one of the most important things you can do to better your sleep.
So let's talk a little bit about different types of hormones. So you have your sex hormones, you have your appetite regulating hormones, and then you have your metabolic hormones like insulin. And these ones are involved sort of in this like blood sugar regulation, but it can be a blood sugar battle at times to make sure that the blood sugar is low and that your cells are taking it up with insulin. So let me explain. If you eat something that is high in sugar, so if you will do things like, right before bed, a big thing of soda or ice cream, the same examples, the examples, your blood sugar level will increase. Now, it is dangerous to have spikes of glucose that are high in your bloodstream for too long. In fact, it's the definition of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And so your body at this point will release insulin, this hormone, to give you and hopefully will release the right amount of insulin to really allow that appropriate removal of glucose from the bloodstream. Now, the way it does this is insulin comes in and the cells will hopefully respond to the insulin that is released. It will help to uptake the glucose from the bloodstream into the cells. And there you go. Now, if you are sleep deprived, again, sleeping for 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night, less than 6 hours, insufficient, you take down that same glucose high load, your body, 2 bad things are happening. And that first off, your body's not going to release enough insulin to be able to deal with it, number one. And number two, your cells that are supposed to be listening to the insulin are not. And so twofold is happening to actually increase the amount of blood sugar that's circulating for longer periods of time. It has been quoted in the literature that sleep deprivation after just a few nights will actually decrease the absorption of glucose by 40% in those who are sleep deprived. And in less than 1 week, a very healthy, otherwise non-diabetic patient, if you're sleep deprived for 1 week and you're doing high glucose things, you'll be diagnosed lab-wise after 1 week as a pre-diabetic that quickly.
That's so crazy. And I think, it's scary because, there's plenty of people out here who are doing that. And it's wild because I think we always just think of, blood sugar being for diabetes. And like, that's the concern is that you have diabetes. But then when you look downstream of what are the causes of uncontrolled diabetes is we look at kidney failure. We look at neuropathy. We look at, losing fingers and toes. Like those are things that happen from high levels of circulating blood sugar. And that's not good. So let alone weight loss and all of that we're talking about, there's other significant medical issues that can be downstream from this issue.
Yeah. Like you said, diabetes is something that you feel okay, but it's an increased risk in all of the, like you said, the eyesight issues, the circulation issues, the kidney issues from diabetes. It's a tough disease and it can start from lack of sleep. Also, it increases your risk of cardiovascular issues, even depression and mental illness. And sometimes when you're anxious and depressed, it's hard to sleep. And that just sort of perpetuates that cycle of feeling just lousy if you're just not rested enough to go for it.
Yeah. And it's so wild, all of it.
It is wild. Now, also wild, I always see the topic of the gut microbiome. I always believe that this is kind of a weird one, but guess what? This can give you some really bad changes to our gut makeup of the good versus the bad bacteria. So the bad is more of this fermented type bacteria, and it has been shown that there will undeniably be an imbalance in your bad bacteria, the fermented type, if you are sleep deprived. So even the flora and fauna of your gut is impacted by not sleeping enough, my friends.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Like, and you hear, it's so crazy too, because then you look at all these things that are sold to help with your gut bacteria and all of these things. And it's like, you don't need those products. Like, get some more sleep.
I know. Seriously. I'm about to cut this podcast short and go to sleep right here, right now. I know this is like a rally cry to tell people to get to sleep.
Well, then it's interesting because you mentioned like the mental health disorders, and anxiety is a big one that causes a lot of sleeplessness. And then there's people, and I remember hearing about this again, kind of anecdotally or kind of like an article or something about this, people who were tracking their sleep, because it did like maybe 2 years ago, it was kind of having a little bit of a moment that like sleep was the new wellness thing. And then people were tracking it with like their Fitbits, their Apple Watches, like there's like the different like rings and all those things you can do. And then people were stressing about their sleep too much, but then they were decreasing the quality of their sleep. And it was like, it really spirals. And I think you look at something like anxiety where you can't sleep. So then you're anxious about the fact that you can't sleep, but then you're anxious because you have anxiety, and it like truly just like spins out of control.
Oh gosh. Yes, that's so true. I felt that way on the plane. I was just like, you're not sleeping. You should be sleeping. You have a lot ahead of you right now, girl. Sleep, sleep, sleep. That doesn't work, guys.
No.
I'm sure you know that as well. That does not work. It is stressful. And speaking of stress, let's talk about cortisol.
Oh,
I mean, first of all, we all have cortisol. If you don't have cortisol, you need it to survive. It's a part of just a healthy biology and that sort of thing. But too much is obviously the stress hormone. And when you are over the top stress, you will get cortisol distribution, that central distribution typically of your weight. If you want to look up somebody with overdrive of cortisol, look up Cushing syndrome, and that will really show you that visceral or central adiposity of the fat. And those increased levels of cortisol are the things that are responsible, as I've already mentioned, for the increased risk of diabetes and heart disease and the depression and the mental illness and just stress in general. And it can make a real impact, again, on your heart and on your overall well-being. It's a big deal.
And let me guess, it goes up when you're sleep deprived.
It sure does. It goes through the roof. So a lot of these things, and I mean, it's easier said than done. And there's a lot of tactics into how do you get a more restful night's sleep? How do you do good sleep hygiene so that when it is time to go to bed, you're ready to go? And I'm sure a lot of you have read so many things like don't read your screens in bed. Don't even watch TV in bed. Like try not to be stimulated in any capacity around bedtime, read a book or something with like very like low lights. There's even special lamps that you can have by your bed and all that.
Yeah, like the red lights and stuff. Do you have a TV in your bedroom?
I do. Do you?
No.
Oh, okay.
We will occasionally bring it in as like a fun treat. We'll bring like our extra TV into the bedroom.
Oh, wow. No, mine's always in there. Erin always has it on when we're falling asleep. And I kind of like it. Although whenever I'm just thinking, when I'm by myself, I mean, I just immediately go to sleep. I probably sleep better. I don't move or anything. Like I just go for it. And when you're talking about like the trackers, I have a Sleep IQ bed. So I have the Sleep IQ app, and I saw in our support group the other day, some people were putting like screenshots of their sleep, and I'm like zooming in. I'm so intrigued by it. I'm going to share mine. Some of them are like enviable though.
Yeah.
Like this like all green didn't even move. Like, like, are you kidding me?
I don't move. I'm very fortunate in that like once I definitely do have sometimes like falling asleep, some anxiety, but I've figured out that if I read a book on my Kindle to fall asleep, which I'm like, it's the Paperwhite. I don't know if the light is the same or if it's like better for your eyes, but I read the same books over and over and over again. and it makes me fall asleep because I don't care. I don't care if I keep reading. I just fall asleep in the middle of a sentence. If I read a new book before bed, I'll stay up.
Wow.
But
no, that's a good tip too. Like something that's boring and like you said, the Dr. Seuss sleep book, just get it and just
read it
out.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, reading out loud too, like has always made me really sleepy. So like when I would babysit, I don't have kids, but like when I would babysit when I was like a teenager, I would like be laying in the bed reading them books, and like I would just be yawning the whole, like they'd laugh at me. Like, what's happening, Hannah? Why are you yawning so much? It's like, are you not getting sleepy from this? Because I sure am.
I know. It is like a perfect little lullaby that I give to me from me. There we go.
Yeah.
Every night.
Once I knock out, I don't move. I've realized that recently. I like wake up in the same position that I fall asleep in.
That's really good. I'm going to prove it. I'll put my thing on Instagram for all to see.
There you go.
Now, I think what I'm about to talk about next, and with your advice as a dietitian, of course, I think this is the most important kind of action items you can take from this podcast. So here it comes, the secrets to success in terms of getting great sleep. We talked a lot about lights and behavioral things and TV, no TV, all that. But the most important thing is the food that you eat and when you eat it. So there's a lot of studies that show that if you eat a lot of sugar with low fiber type foods, that a lot of bad things will happen. 3 to be exact. Number 1, overall, over the night, you're going to get less deep sleep. Mm-hmm. Number 2, you're going to wake up at night, in the middle of the night. And then sometimes if I wake up, sometimes it is hard for me to fall asleep. So pretty much the minute I wake up, I'm like my mind starts thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got so much to do. And then I just kind of start going. But then number 3 is if your metabolism is roaring up, like right before bed, like you just ate all these pretzels or whatever, and then like all of a sudden, like your metabolism is going, it's going to increase your metabolic rate and therefore increase your temperature. You're going to get hot, and then you're going to wake up from that too. So this is something that is just so key. The timing is you want to make sure you don't want to be starving. You don't want to be too hungry, but you also don't want to be too full. And when you go to sleep, I think the too full is even more damaging or dangerous to your overnight sleep patterns there.
Yeah. And what is in that food that you're having before. So yeah, I always try to tell, because, we always want to find the good balance between like health and wellness and good habits and like a good relationship with food. Right. And so you'll see a lot of people promoting things like, and it always will go by a different name. But intermittent fasting is the most common one that you'll see it called, but it's the general category that I say is time restricted eating. So I always get people asking me like, I can't eat, or telling me I can't eat after 6. And I'm like, why? Like, give me a reason. We can talk this through. And they're like, well, I heard I should be restricting my diet from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever, because they've been told that this window exists. And for some people that works, but I always tell people, I say, look at what time you're going to bed, count backwards 2 hours from there, and try to stop eating before that. So if you're not going to bed until 10 p.m., then you can eat until 8 o'clock, which, like, let's be real, most of us who have like a 9-to-5 job are not having dinner finished by 6 p.m. I surely am not, just not reality. So looking at like, what's your reality of, okay, now if you're going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're like, well, that means I can eat until 2, you may need to reprioritize, unless you're like a shift worker or something who's overnight. And yeah, I always say like 2 hours before bed.
That's what the literature says exactly. Yeah. So that's it, my friends. Don't eat 2 hours before bed. And that's going to keep you out of a lot of trouble, because a lot of times you think you're hungry, but you're actually just exhausted and tired. Mm-hmm. And so your body, remember, again, it wants a quick energy source to keep you going if you're super tired. So it's going to start to crave the simple sugars, and then you're going to get yourself in this vicious cycle. Yeah. So I know that it's really hard, but I think if you lose weight, and I think I understand there's a lot of factors to it, but I realize the thing that has helped me the most is when I do not snack at night, period, on anything. Yeah. That's it. Stop and be done with it after dinner. And I do a late dinner. So I don't think there's any magic in like, oh, I eat dinner at 4 p.m. Then you probably will be starving again.
Yeah, of course. If you're not going to bed for 6 hours after dinner, exactly. Like of course you're like, that's just normal, natural being a human is getting hungry every couple hours. And that's where it is also too, like, what are you eating in that time? So you mentioned like pretzels, like you wouldn't want to be trying to have those like simple carbohydrates before bed. You'd want to try to always have, like we always say, like have a good balanced snack with fiber and protein in it. So, maybe some fruit with some like Greek yogurt or, whatever you like in the evenings. And it could be kind of like, it doesn't have to be like boring and bland, but trying to have, if you're going to have a snack before closer to bed, try to keep it 2 hours away and try to make sure it has some sort of like protein and fiber in it. And there's also some thought too, to like, you'll hear people saying, and this is such like an American way to eat too, is we eat a really big dinner meal and like a light lunch and a fairly light, usually a lot of people will skip breakfast or do a very light breakfast. And like to kind of swap that. So you're eating more during the day and then having like a lighter meal in the evening. So then you're not running into these issues of like, oh, I just had this really big heavy meal before bed. And now my insulin is going to be going up and then my blood sugar drops and then I wake up and I have all of these, all these different things. So maybe, if you have the ability to maybe switch your larger meal to lunchtime and kind of think of like a lunch sized dinner, just flip flop them.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I do that a lot. I eat a really big breakfast and I'm a big lunch person too. I eat like pretty solid 3 meals. And then sometimes today, for example, I went to the Capitol Grill for lunch. I'm not really hungry and it's like late at night. So I should probably, I got it, but I always eat something no matter what. And then, so those are the keys. When you do eat, your dinner should be higher protein, lots of fiber, try to decrease the sugar, and then stop that meal. At least don't eat anything else 2 hours prior to bedtime, because 2 hours is what it takes to digest that sort of a load.
Right.
So those are the keys there. Now let's just touch briefly and switch gears here on obstructive sleep apnea and some sleep disorders. So a lot of our patients do struggle with that. And as part of our routine evaluation and consultation for bariatric surgery, we do screen patients. I think every program in the country, in the world, screens for sleep apnea because it's such a high risk in our patient population. Yeah. So there's 2 different ways that we as clinicians can screen for it. One way is to use something called a subjective measure, which is called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, which is where we ask you a series of questions. How likely are you to fall asleep in different scenarios? And then if your number is greater than 10, we will automatically order you now a home sleep study. So you won't have to spend the night in an offsite. Typically, we can get that diagnosis just by you sleeping in your own bed and then waking up and either mailing the results back. Sometimes that we even get the results through Bluetooth. A sleep specialist will interpret that study and will be able to see if you have any degree of severity of sleep apnea. And then the other screening tool is called the Stop Bang. And that looks at things like your sex, your neck circumference, and different variables. And if your number is, if you have high blood pressure, is on that screening test. And then if your number is 3 or above, then we would order a home sleep study. And so then if you have mild sleep apnea, typically CPAP, which is a type of device that will give you positive airway pressure because it's obstructive sleep apnea, meaning your airway is intermittently obstructing, which is why you're snoring to kind of wake yourself up and making those noises. And so if it's mild, you're obstructing your airway only a few times an hour, then CPAP compliance is optional. But if it's moderate or severe, in order to have bariatric surgery and undergo the anesthesia where your respirations will be compromised, we actually will require that you are wearing the CPAP machine and you're compliant with it.
Yeah. And it's definitely one of those things that I would hear, patients are like, I don't like the machine or I can't tolerate. But I think a lot of times people, once they can get used to it, once they are like in that habit, they feel so much better because they're actually getting restful sleep. I had a friend of mine that had sleep apnea, and I remember he like left his charging cord. We were working somewhere where we stayed on site, and he like left his charging cord for his machine at home. So he didn't have it for a few nights, and he finally got it like a couple days later. And I'm not kidding. I think he slept 14 hours because he had he was so exhausted from like the few nights of not having that machine that once he had it back, he was just like, he was zonked out. So like it made a huge difference in that, it was wild to see that.
Yeah, I guess goes back to the whole thing here is that we need sleep. You can't avoid it. You can't be superhuman. You can't, I was a resident in general surgery training, and there was a lot of sleep deprivation. Every second or third night, we would stay up 30 hours, and then we would sleep from like noon to 6. So the Australia trip, I didn't really have, I don't know. I think I'm just kind of like almost used to, I'm not used to it. No one is used to it is the bottom line. And then you can run and run and run, but you're going to collapse at some point. So get in good habits of great sleep habits, of not eating before bed, of getting your situation comfortable. Maybe you need a firmer pillow or a softer mattress, or you need it
turn
darker
the
in the room.
AC down.
Turn the AC down. Yeah, make it cool in there. Heat, getting hot and waking up in the middle of the night. We just heard it. Your metabolism yourself, your internal furnace can go overboard. So really just like give yourself the optimal conditions. Wear a sleep mask maybe in terms of like an eyelid cover. I don't know. Like I don't like to sleep with pants or like socks on. I never sleep with socks on.
Oh, if I try to sleep with socks on, I wake up with them like in the blankets. They never stay on.
No, never sleep with socks on, my friends. That's like, I tell my kids and stuff like that too. Like I try to like get them like optimally set up with like their whole squad, the proper pillows. There's a lot. And there's also something to your routine as well. So you're talking about, reading to yourself or reading to the babies or the kids. And just
routine
get into
is
a routine.
Super important for it. And something else we kind of touched on was like people who exercise a lot. I think a lot of times the question comes down. So first of all, exercise can help you sleep, but if it's if it's in the evening, that can rev you back up. Granted, for some people, like I'm not a morning workout person. It just does not happen for me. So like I'm always going to be an evening one. And I know that that's just how I function. But exercise in general helps you sleep. But then I always think you hear people saying, well, how can I get all of this done in a day? I have to exercise. I have to go to my job. I have to make food. I have to do this. And sleep tends to be the thing that gets sacrificed. And so I think really looking at like, how can I reprioritize this as part of my health journey? Because it's obviously going to play out and affect you down, in other ways. And maybe you are exercising a lot. And again, we're not seeing like the muscle gains and you're like, well, I'm going to the gym more and more and more. And maybe that's the wrong answer. Maybe it's going to the gym less often and sleeping more and getting that rest and recovery and having that benefit. Maybe you'll start to see some actual benefits and gains there. I love it. Rest and recovery. It's essential. Yeah. And you can't build a bank of it. No, you cannot. It doesn't. It goes away. And that was the other thing that, we heard on, some of these when we were doing our research for this episode, is that you think that, okay, I'm just going to catch up on the weekends. I'm just going to hibernate on the weekends. But again, breaking the routine, not making every day look like the day before, the day after is not good. So I know I'm horrible with that. I go so hard during the weekdays, and on Friday night, I'm like, I'm no fun. I'm just like out. Yep. And it's hard. I would say, as always with routines and with making changes, it's like, start with where you can. Okay, if you're going to bed right now at midnight every night, maybe try going to bed at 11:45. Like, you're not going to magically, some people have to go to the extremes. I'm not that way. Some people will be like, nope, 10 p.m. I'm in bed and I'm sleeping, like whatever. No, start where you're at. Like, work up to getting more sleep. That's what I'm going to need to do. Because like I said, last night I was like, oh my gosh, something's off here. I need to like work on this, and I have to be intentional about it. Yeah. No, you're so right. And I need to make my husband do it too. It's his fault. Well, that's true. You need support. Well, I was thinking about, I was going to text you and see if I see those ... dots go. And I'm like, oh, there she is. There she is. I was going to trick you, but that means I'm up too. Yeah. I know. So. I do better in the early mornings, but I need to go to bed earlier for that to happen. I kind of just let myself naturally wake up now. Yeah. You asked me, are you, I'm a night owl. Are you a morning person then? I love mornings so much better, but yet I find myself like, if I stay up late, then I screwed up the whole next day. Yeah. I do. In a perfect world, I would get up when it was still dark out. Oh. But I don't. I just like let my body naturally wake up, and it's not going to do that if I'm going to bed at 11 or 12 because I'm talking to you or doing this doom scroll. I mean, that's just the reality. I know. We got to throw our phones in the lake or something. No, we should on so many levels. Yeah.
This is so bad. Well, we already know
our lives
that.
would come to a screeching halt. I don't think that would
That's
work.
true. How would people listen to a consumer podcast? That's what we want. We love this.
I know.
Well, speaking of, you can always go to our website, drxdietitian.com, and look at some of our episode guides. We will be sure to be giving you some of these amazing sleep tips to help you on your weight loss and overall health journey. And you can also follow us on Instagram. We're at drxdietitian there as well.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. And we're looking forward to hearing all about your sleep habits. Give us your best sleep practices. Like what works for you? Because clearly we need help over here.
We all need help. Come on.
Share it with your fellow fans, and we will be sure to make sure that everybody is getting better sleep. And we will see you next week.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.